And you'll have 10 psi for the rear tire and 14 psi for the front tires. So when changing the air filter, you'll find two different types. One with a pre-filter and one without a pre-filter. They will both work. You can find them either at Lowe's or Walmart. But you get different information about the horsepower. One requires more horsepower to use the pre-filter, or it doesn't. So it just check to see which one will works for you. If you have hard starting, I'd probably take the pre-filter off. So let's go ahead and start changing the filter. And so you take a couple of bolts out the back here behind, they bolt upward, and these screws on the back are 3/8. Then you remove the shroud from the back of the lawnmower. And then you'll have access to 2 twist bolts. And there's the air filter. So with the air filter, it only has one end that's open, the other side's closed. So in the manual, it'll tell you to do like an S motion to get it onto that manifold and push on. So there's only one S way to get it on there. And the air filter just kind of snaps in there. You just kind of have to tilt it, and there's only one way it can go in. So this one didn't have the pre-filter on there, but I guess I'll go ahead and install the pre-filter since it should be. But anyway, you just kind of jab it at an angle and push it on in there, and it's kind of greased so you can push it. So it's pretty easy to do the air filter. So there's the new one. Just make sure it sits kind of tight on this tube. This tube's closed in. Got a pre-filter on it. So once you wedge the filter onto the intake, just put the shroud back on. And then you put the shroud back on, lock up the bolts. And remember, there's no oil filter. It should be located here, but there's not one on this 110. Done with the air filter, put your shroud back on. All right, got the Craftsman R110. I'm gonna do a spark plug change on it. You just take off the boot. Use a 5/8 socket, spark plug socket. And you just turn it counterclockwise. Shouldn't be too hard to break off there. You probably need an extension. And I got this lawnmower last year, so it's had one season of mowing, and you can see that it's burning black, a little rich there. Anyhow, this is the original that will fit on there. So this is a RC12YC. You can pick this one up at Walmart. Lowe's website recommends an equivalent of a E3.20, and they're more expensive than these, and I've heard bad reviews about them, but I'm going to give it a try. They came with a spark plug gap higher than what the engine recommends, so I'm going to gap this with a feeler gap to proper spec. Okay, so my original E3 had a .040 gap. I had to push it back in and then use the feeler gap, and I gapped it around 0.028 gap. The original RCY original that came with it, the gap I measured it with the wire gapper to be 0.26 between there and 0.030. So if this doesn't work, I'll go with the other genuine RC part, but I'll let you know how these work. And you can see where the spark plug needs to go. So you just put it back in. I would start putting it in by hand first and then use your socket. So then you can just start slowly threading it up until it gets tight. And you can torque these down, but I usually just get it real tight and then take about another ½ inch turn. And then you can put your boot back on. And you'll hear a snap or feel a snap when it's back on there. So just based on starting and moving my mower back to its shed, the E320, which replaces the RC12YC, which was in it, and it's gapped properly, seems to work pretty good. All right, next we're going to install a fuel filter inline. One side goes to the gas tank, one side goes to the motor. Just kind of match up the shapes. You're going to pull this side off with a pair of pliers. Put that one in there. This is the fuel filter, the white thing between the two hoses. Easy to get to. Note that the fuel filter is in the middle, and you'll have the hose lines left going to 14 to the carburetor and right going to the fuel tank. So note that the hose clamps are represented by letter B. I would remove those hose clamps. You just have to pinch them with a pair of pliers and move them about 2 inches away from the fuel filter on the back side and the right, left and right side. So after moving both hose clamps back away from the filter, then you pull both lines off of the fuel filter, and note the orientation of the fuel filter, because the big circle will be on the right, the smaller circle will be on the left, just as shown in the video as well. And have a bucket ready to catch the fuel from the right hose. I would remove that one first, because that will empty the contents of your fuel tank. And note the lower simplicity of the gas tank when you want to store it for the winter. You just remove one of the lines by the fuel filter to drain the gas tank, and you can see how simple that is. So then you'll put your new fuel filter, noting the orientation, you'll just twist them into the gas lines and then use your pliers to move the clamps close to the fuel filter, and that should be it for that. And here's how I changed the lawnmower blade. Do not try this at home.
I said, take. I said, take. Me out to the ball game. Take. I said take. Me out with the crowd. Now buy me some peanuts. Buy me some peanuts. Buy me. Take.
So you normally should have came with this oil funnel to help you divert the oil when you're changing the oil. And this one doesn't appear to have a oil filter. And it should be on the other side, but there's no oil filter on this one. And it will fit right into that piece. Drains the oil, allegedly helps get the oil to not make it so messy. We'll see how that goes. And I would just loosen it with a ratchet, 13 millimeter, a multi-head 13 millimeter, and use your hand to untighten the rest, and then put your oil catch underneath. So there's the oil in that half funnel to guide it down into your milk jug or whatever. The tire kind of gets in the way and it's still dripping, but I got a shower curtain underneath it so that'll help you clean up with your garage there. And I'm going to tilt it to get some more of that oil out. So after you've drained the oil, it gets a little bit messy. I wanted to add a nipple to there, but there's not enough clearance from the bottom without me trying to strip the thread, so I'm just going to go ahead and put the square drain plug back in. I got it with some sealant, and so I'm going to put that back in. And then you'll use your 13. Just tighten that back up. And it's not very tight because it's tapered. So just a few turns until it's pretty snug. So I got the drain plug in. I'm going to fill it up with some premium 4-cycle small engine oil, Briggs & Stratton SA30 funnel. I'm going to pour in half and check it. So don't do what I initially did and add the whole thing. So with no oil filter, you have to compensate to add less. And of course you want to start it and run it for a few moments and then check it again. So on this Craftsman 110, the oil changes are really messy. So I'm attempting to take that 3/8 plug for the oil drain and put a nipple on there just to make it a little easier. You're going to run into problems with the position of the motor and the battery, so you can only put a certain size length. So I'm going to attempt to do that to make my oil changes a little bit more tidier. So here will be the basic setup. You need a 3-inch male end to go into the engine. That reduces down to a 1/4 inch female and a 4-inch 1/4 inch nipple with a 1/4 inch cap to end it. And I'm going to try elbow, but I don't think we have enough room. So the reason you go from a 3/8 to 1/4 inch is because the clearance for the cap and the bolt on, if you try to do 3/8 all the way, you don't have enough room to tighten because the 3/8 is just too big and there's just not a lot of clearance. And also, so when you get these, you want to pipe dope or tape these, whatever you like to use, and then put it on the lawnmower. So I went with the mega tape and some pipe dope. I know it might be overkill. You don't want to get any around the line there, so you just take it to maybe the second thread to put into that drain plug hole right there. And so you want to get it started just using your hands. Keep it level and don't cross thread the threads. And then you want to wrench it down pretty good. So it's a 18. Let's see what I can get in. I might have to use a crescent wrench. So as you can see, you gotta put the 18 at an angle, but if you take your time, you won't cross thread the threads there. So 18 millimeter. And the whole reason you go from a quarter or 3/8 inch to a 1/4 inch is the spacing underneath there, so you can get your cap on. You have to have some clearance. If you went with the 3/8, you wouldn't be able to get a cap on there because there's just like zero clearance underneath there. So, and there's the battery view blocking. So now, at least when you take this cap off, you can just put a plastic tube and drain it to wherever you need it to go. So if you have all the oil drained out, the website says it'll hold 48 ounces, which is, this is 48 ounces, but you got to remember this Craftsman R110 2019 model doesn't have an oil filter, so you have to compensate for that. So you can't just put the full 48 in there because you will overfill it. I learned that the hard way because this thing doesn't have an oil filter. So anyhow, I'm going to demonstrate what that nipple can do. Or if you don't want to use the hose, you can use your half funnel. It'll at least get it away from your tire.